Yes, I know what you're thinking. Jake, you've been away. And yes, I have been away. But you know what? The semester's over. It's winter break. And I have a couple weeks to get out some content. So that is exactly what I plan on doing. Welcome into the latest edition of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. I'm your host, Jake McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at jmcdonald95 as well as facebook.com/jmcdonald95. And of course, all of this is coming to you through iTunes or SoundCloud. Again, you can check us out at charmcitybirdwatch.com, facebook.com/charmcitybirdwatch, as well as charmcitybw on Twitter. Now, with it being winter break, I know that this podcast directly is not going to be Baltimore sports related. There is going to be some discussion because there's been a lot going on. We're in the midst of a Ravens season where they're fighting for a playoff spot. We're at the winter meetings right now. There's a lot of Machado rumors going around, which is all true, and there will be plenty of coverage over the next few weeks regarding all of this. At the same time, the Philadelphia Eagles have the best record in the NFC at 11-2. Right now, they have already clinched the NFC North, and they're vying for not just a playoff spot, but a first-round bye and home field advantage. At the same time, though, they just lost their franchise quarterback this past weekend against the Rams. And this podcast is a disclaimer. This podcast is not as in response to that injury whatsoever. I had been wanting to do this podcast all season long when the Eagles were doing well. Even though I am not affiliated with Philadelphia sports, I am not a fan of Philadelphia sports. I go to a school in central Pennsylvania where it's basically the majority of its Eagles fans. There are a lot of New Jersey kids the New York kids that root for the Giants and the Jets. There's a lot of Steelers fans, but the majority of Bloomsburg is taken up by Eagles fans. And I live with an Eagles fan. My roommate. I am friends. I interact with Eagles fans every single day. I know plenty of alumni that have graduated from Bloomsburg and have gone to have careers in the Philadelphia media. So I have a lot of ties with the city. I have a lot of ties with the Eagles, and I've been wanting to do this podcast all season long with the Eagles' success. I just didn't have the free time, but now I finally have some time because this is going to be a long episode. What it is, I have 7 interviews of people that I go to school with. Some have graduated. Most of them are mass comm majors. One, I believe, is not. Some of them work in Philadelphia media. And a lot of them are just, they're all my friends who I interact with pretty regularly, whether it's in person or on social media. So the way this episode works, there's going to be, it's going to be a set of responses, all from conversations I had with the 7 interviewees back to back. There's going to be information about each interviewee in the description box, so you can check out all their social media. And then there's 4 different questions about the Eagles. And how it works is you'll hear me ask the question, and then I'm just going to edit all of the responses for each specific question because I'm going in the same order with each interviewee back to back. And then I will mark in the description box what exact time each person is talking for each specific question in case you want to skip ahead, or somebody in this podcast and you just want to hear one person's response. That's fine. And then for some of I have 4 questions about the Eagles, and then I have a bonus part at the end because there's been a lot of discussion at the winter meetings this week, obviously, about Manny Machado. And one of the teams that it's said to have some interest or has possibly made a trade offer to the Orioles is the Phillies. So some of the interviewees, 3 or 4 of them, I will include responses about their input, since they also either cover the Phillies or support the Phillies as fans as well at the very end. So without further ado, enjoy this episode. And I wish, even though this isn't an Eagles website or whatever, we certainly want to wish Carson Wentz a speedy recovery. Yes, is the timing of this episode the best because of the injury? No. But at the same time, I think that allowed for some really realistic analysis of what the Eagles have in Carson Wentz and how far this team can get in the postseason when they eventually do make the playoffs, because they've already won the NFC East. They will be in the playoffs. They just won up Carson Wentz. So without further ado, let's get it started. All right, real quick, before we dive into the questions, let's meet our 7 interviewees.
I am Jack Fritz. I was the sports editor of BU Now while Jake was there, and a friend of classes and stuff. Right now, I'm a producer of the evening show at WIP in Philadelphia, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Fritz34.
So I am Tim Kelly. I'm a classmate of Jake at Bloomsburg University, and then I'm also the managing editor at SportsTalkPhilly.com. I am the managing Phillies editor, but also do a lot of work with the Eagles and Sixers. You can check out my work, as I said, on SportsTalkPhilly.com, and then you can like my Facebook page or follow me on Twitter. Both of those are at Tim Kelly Sports.
My name is Matt Loch. I'm a 21-year-old senior at Bloomsburg University in the same major as you, Jake. Had a lot of classes together. We're in the same club, so a lot of the projects we kind of do together. After college, hoping to do anything in sports media, preferably something with like a live sports broadcast, more so than like in a studio. So yeah, obviously I'm a big Eagles fan, Philadelphia across the board. So.
My name is Enrico Connors. I'm a business major here at Bloomsburg with a minor in marketing. I am really good friends with Jake McDonald, and my Twitter and Instagram are both Enrico P.A. Connors.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Brown. I'm actually a friend of Jake McDonald. I'm a mass communication major on the telecommunication track. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimbo Slice, OVO. I'm also part of Cap Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and as well the National Broadcasting Society.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dean Turner from Bloomsburg University. I am a mass communications major, and I'm studying journalism. Classmates with Jake, and we've had a couple classes together. My Twitter is RENRUTNAED, and I am the sports editor for BU Now.
Evan Hartsock. I'm a mass communications major at Bloomsburg University. I'm the managing editor at The Voice. That's where I work with Jake. He does sports. And I'm also working at the Sports Information Office at Bloomsburg as well.
Question number 1. Put the Carson Wentz injury out of your head for just a minute. Before this weekend, what has it been like watching this Eagles team all season long?
It almost feels like it's been a dream, to be honest. Being a Philly sports fan, you try not to get your hopes up too much because the Eagles often, find a way to let you down. But this year it seems like it was different. I went to a game. I watched them play the Bears. The atmosphere in the link was just crazy. It felt like it's a special year. And, I'm really hoping that just because Wentz went down, that doesn't mean that we're going to lose that momentum and that energy and that it's going to keep going.
It was a lot different than every other season in that there was a greater sense of optimism. It looked like the Eagles didn't really have any holes. The defense was playing really well, especially the front seven. The corners were outplaying, their actual ability, and then the offense was cooking. We had the backs going. Nelson Aguilar had a big turnaround. And so it was just like much different than every other season, rather, in that there was a greater sense of optimism, and it looked like we really might be able to actually go to the Super Bowl and pull it off for the first time in franchise history.
It's honestly been amazing. I mean, to be at the top of the league, the past years, Eagles have struggled. Being an Eagles fan can get really tough sometimes. And, even going through the whole situation with Chip Kelly, it was ridiculous. And, we went 10-6 the first year with Chip Kelly and, made the playoffs. But, that first round exit was very disappointing. So it's just kind of good to see us doing as well as we are, as well as, to see the defense. Our secondary looks great. Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills, and, Malcolm Jenkins has always been great. So, I just like how everything has been coming together.
Well, the Eagles came out strong. I didn't really know that they would come out this strong. I thought it would be another developmental year where maybe we would go a little over 500. I didn't really expect this to happen. I like the way the line's playing. We had Jason Peters go down, and Big V came in with the left tackle position. He's been doing decent, not great, but, he's doing his best what he can. Carson Wentz didn't get hurt because of him. He got injured because of himself, so that's a big plus. We were missing a lot at middle linebacker with Jordan Hicks going down, but Najee Good and Nigel Bradham came in and really helped out on the defensive side. Our corners were playing well the first 8 games. These last 2 games, they were playing a little rough. With our safeties, they were playing rough. But we're doing pretty well. Overall, the team is just playing well together. The wide receivers that we picked up are playing fantastic. You know, Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith is doing what he can. Nelson Aguilar, huge improvement this year. Running back game, you know, that big pickup with Jay Ajayi and Garrett Blunt, and Corey Clement, the rookie, undrafted rookie, fantastic, all-around fantastic team, you know. And Carson Wentz, you know, he was the league MVP. Basically, him and Tom Brady were fighting for it, and that's huge because the second year going up against Tom Brady, arguably the best quarterback that has ever been in the NFL. That's huge. I was very excited for the season, and I was excited to go into Seattle and LA to play two good teams, especially after kicking 8 other teams' butts who are a little under 500 or 500 at the moment. So yeah, that's how I feel about this team all this year, and I'm excited for the playoffs. I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
I mean, so obviously it's been a lot of fun watching the Eagles win. It's been a lot of fun for once getting to throw the shade back at other people, because you know the Eagles haven't normally been all that good. But at the same time, seeing them this good has been really, really nerve-wracking, just because, you know, being an Eagles fan for 21 years, you know that they'll start off really well and then anything can change at the last minute. So I think it's been – I love the phrase that there was a Philly beat writer used. It was cautious hysteria. And I think it matches perfectly. It's so exciting watching them, but knowing that, you know, even – I mean, obviously the Wentz injury is what did it, but knowing that anything could go drastically wrong in one play. I mean, like one missed snap and the quarterback has to go back and snaps his leg, or a wide receiver tries to cut and tears the ACL. Like I knew something was coming up, but it was still, you know, really fun watching them every game. You know, having the confidence coming in every game what was going to happen, basically.
I mean, prior to Wentz going down, this was an Eagles team that really had the it factor. There was a sense of unselfishness, of kind of a next man up attitude, even after players like Darren Sproles, Jordan Hicks, and Jason Peters went down. And those aren't cliches. The Eagles lost a uniquely productive piece in Sproles, who's been in the NFL for a long time. They lost their signal caller in Jordan Hicks, and they lost Jason Peters, their Hall of Fame left tackle. In any other year, that pretty much ends your season. It didn't for the Eagles. You saw all the celebrations. This really has been a special team. Carson Wentz, of course, was at the forefront of that. But I saw someone on Twitter say this after the Wentz injury, and it really rang true. Wentz is going to come back as is much of the talent that the Eagles have moving forward. But it's very hard to maintain the intangibles that the Eagles had this year from year to year. In addition to that, Ezekiel Elliott's not going to get suspended. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to break his collarbone every year. Seattle might have an offensive line. So a lot of things broke the Eagles' way, and then they also overcame a lot of adversity. So this really felt like a year where they had a chance to do damage, and a lot of that's changed now with the Wentz injury.
Well, it's been like anything, unlike anything I can really remember ever since 2004. I mean, this was the second best Eagles team I'd ever seen in my entire life. I just wasn't used to that kind of pure domination from this football team. They looked well coached. They looked well prepared. They had an MVP caliber quarterback. They had a legit defensive line. Just everything on paper was working out perfectly. That usually never happens. So it was like it was nirvana. I mean, it was football nirvana. And like, I'm sure everyone else, I mean, I talked myself into this team really being the team that was going to end our drought here in Philadelphia. But, I mean, that's, for me at least, I mean, there's some people in Philadelphia who are like, yeah, you know, we can rally around Foles. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. So, I mean, while watching the team, it was unlike anything I can really remember ever since really 2004.
Question 2. Take me through the moment you saw Wentz walking to the locker room. What was your reaction then, and what was your reaction when you learned that it was indeed a torn ACL and a season-ending injury?
So once, I saw him go into the medical tent, and that was kind of like the first kind of heart attack moment. There were a couple games ago, I don't remember exactly which one, where Wentz went into the tent but came out right away. And so I think I saw him go into the tent and just kind of be like, all right, he's fine. You know, he'll come out. And then I saw him walking to the locker room, and I knew that something was up, just because everything you hear about Wentz, he's not the kind of player that if it's a minor injury, he's just going to say now. Like, if it's a minor injury, he's going to get back out on the field. So I knew that if he was going to the locker room, it was something big. And especially since it was in the second half at that point. So it wasn't even like he was just trying to get a head start in the locker room before halftime. Looking back on it now, I mean, at the time I thought, like, obviously the season's over. You know, in the middle of the game, you know, you're watching the number 2 and 3 teams in the NFC go at it. Once Wentz goes down, I thought we were going to lose the game. And, you know, we would still make the playoffs, but I didn't think – I mean, I thought our season was over. Now that I've had some time to process it – sorry, this is a really long answer. But now that I've had some time to process it and, like, going back and knowing what Nick Foles has done and knowing what – I mean, he's done in Philly and then even when he went to Rams, knowing that his struggles in St. Louis, I mean, that you can't put that all on Nick Foles. I mean, Jeff Fisher didn't do any favors, and neither did his receiving core or offensive line or really anybody the Rams had. So obviously Nick Foles isn't Carson Wentz. I don't think we're still a shoo-in for the Super Bowl, but I think we can still make some noise in the playoffs. I think the team around Carson Wentz is what made it so good. I think we have receivers that, you know, as long as the ball is somewhat in their area, they're going to make the catch. Our running backs, just, I mean, with a combination of 3 or 4 of them we have, I think that we can get the running game going. We'll be fine. Our defense is phenomenal. So Wentz isn't the entire team, but he's a big part of it.
Well, when he went down, you know, like he got up. He was a little shaky, but, you know, like it's football. It's going to hurt. He's a tough guy. He's a big guy. I'm sure, like, I thought he was going to be all right. And then all of a sudden he, like, you know, he threw that touchdown pass and then he, like, limped off the field and went out. And, like, that was very confusing because you're like, well, what the hell happened? He just threw a touchdown pass. How is he now limping off the field and going back into the locker room? So, you know, you just, like, fear for the worst when that happens because, you know, that's your MVP. That's your team captain. That he's the main reason why we're where we are. And it was scary, very scary. And then to see, like, an hour later that they were afraid it's a torn ACL is even, like, more of a heart wrencher. So yeah, and then the next day we all found out it was actually a torn ACL. He's out for the season. I was crushed. I felt like when I watched Penn State lose to Michigan State and Ohio State, like I was crushed. I thought we were going to have a chance to BCS bowl and we lost it. But same thing here. Like, you know, I thought like maybe like I didn't say the word Super Bowl yet affiliated with the Eagles, but I was saying playoff run, number 1 seed, home advantage, and like, you know, that kind of went out the toilet. But not really because of our backup quarterback.
You're really gonna make me do this. Well, so I do all the games down at the station because we are the flagship of the Eagles. So I was actually hearing it earlier than it happened on TV. So like, I mean, the way they called it, it was just like, hey, nothing really to see here. Wentz got hit, but it wasn't like he can't play or anything or he's severely hurt. So when I saw him get hit, I was like, wow, he got crushed. But he seemed fine. You know, there's a little limp. I mean, earlier in the season, he's been banged around a couple times, and he's been limping a little bit. He's looked a little shaken up, but he's always just been fine. And then he finished the drive, obviously. He had 4 more plays in him, and he threw a touchdown on a torn ACL and whatever, which is just heroic. And then they put him in the concussion tent, which I was like, that doesn't really make any sense because he didn't really get hit on his head unless he got some whiplash when he landed and kind of whipped his head against the ground. So I was like a little confused there. But then he went to the locker room and I was like, are you know, I was already in a dark place pretty quickly. You know, I was just like, and then they came out the knee thing, and unfortunately we didn't have the Aaron Andrews report, so I didn't hear that when she said that the Eagles officials came out shaking their heads. So I didn't see any of that. You know, I mean, we just had our sideline reporters saying how the concussion specialists were on the field, so it doesn't really make any sense as to why they would say it was concussion. But yeah, I mean, he went once I heard he was done or heard he was done for the game, I was just like, it's torn ACL. And I went straight there because I've seen many times you could walk on a torn ACL, and everyone's like, well, he's walking. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, you can walk on a torn ACL. So basically, I was just dead inside, and, like, I watched the rest of the game angrily, and, like, people on Twitter were like, oh, we're NFC East champions, and I just got madder and madder because being an NFC East champion doesn't really mean anything when you have a chance to win the Super Bowl, and I just felt like those hopes were all completely dashed. So like Brandon Graham returned the pick for a touchdown to end the game, clinched the NFC, and I just didn't care. I sat there emotionless, basically.
When it first happened, I mean, he stayed in for those 4 plays and threw a touchdown pass. So I'm thinking the hit looked nasty, but maybe it's just an MCL. Maybe it's nothing too serious. Maybe he can go by playoffs, or at least he misses the rest of the season, but it's nothing serious. Then when I found out it was an ACL tear, I mean, obviously I was crushed. I kind of felt like the season was over. I'm more concerned about the future now and just hoping that he can come back and still be the same dynamic player, that ACL tear won't affect his mobility and everything too much. But we just got to bank on Nick Foles now and see what he can do.
So after he threw that last touchdown, it's worth going even further back to that. After he threw that last touchdown, he came off the field. His face looked really red, and it's hotter in L.A., obviously, than it would be in Philadelphia at this time of the year. So part of me thought it was just that. And then he was in the medical tent, so I figured when he dove into the end zone on that play, he may have gotten a concussion. They hadn't replayed the hit a ton, so I figured when he dove into the end zone and he got hit in the head. I mean, and I don't simply say, oh, it's just a concussion. I've had a couple concussions. They're really not fun. But in terms of being able to come back, even with a bad concussion, NFL players miss a game or two, and then they're probably back. So you don't wish a concussion on anybody, but that was my initial thought. Now, once it became clear it was a serious knee injury, I think it was a situation where anyone around the team's heart just kind of sank. Wentz was having an MVP caliber year in a season where the NFC truly was wide open. It felt like the most Philadelphia sports thing ever that he sustained a serious injury this deep into the season, when even a lot of skeptics had started to think that the Eagles really had a chance to do damage come January.
So after Wentz threw that touchdown, obviously the NFL hit us with one of their commercials. And when they came back, I think the first picture they showed was the blue tent. And they're like, look, Carson Wentz is in the blue tent. And I'm like, oh, no, here we go. We're 14 games into the season, and Wentz is going to get hurt. And I'm thinking, I'm not thinking the worst. I'm thinking it might be minor or whatever. And then he goes back to the locker room, and he's hobbling, and you see people speculating on Twitter. And at that moment, I still had a sense that he was going to be all right. I thought maybe they were being cautious with him because he did stay in for a couple of plays after the injury looked like it occurred. And then when the news actually broke on Monday, it was just heartbreaking. I sat there almost in disbelief. It was like, here we go again, another season down the drain, and just couldn't believe it, really. It was just disheartening.
To be completely honest, when I actually saw the play that he got injured on, I kind of already, I figured that would be the case, because you could just see it in his face as if he, ran into a brick wall, and I already knew that we were in for some trouble. But when I actually found out, I was very devastated. I mean, Carson Wentz, he's been incredible. I mean, he's only been with us for 2 years now, but he's done so much for the team, and, I sure hope he gets better soon.
Question number 3. What do the Eagles have in Carson Wentz?
Well, us Eagles fans have everything for this guy. I don't feel like any Eagles fan would, I don't feel like they would, hate him for what happened. We believe in him, and, our whole team, I feel like, is on his back. And that's a huge pressure, but I feel like he accepts it and wants it. And I feel like he's performing great with it, and he loves playing in Philly, and he loves being on the Eagles and playing for the Eagles. Because, just the way the team is run, Doug Peterson and him have a great relationship, and it's working out really well with the whole offensive scheme for him. And I feel like him being the franchise quarterback that we've been dying for since McNabb retired, he's what we're looking for, and I hope he's here to stay for a long time.
You see all these teams that struggle year in and year out draft to try to find a quarterback, and it just doesn't work out. And, to have Carson Wentz, who looks like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and Big Ben out there, it's just such a relief to go into every Sunday knowing that you have a chance to win because you have a top 5 quarterback. I mean, if he doesn't get hurt the way he was playing in that L.A. game, I mean, that probably would have locked up MVP for him, I think. The way he was performing on the road against a tough team, that was an MVP performance, and he probably would have won it if he doesn't tear the ACL.
I definitely think he has the potential to be one of the greatest, Eagles quarterbacks at least. I don't want to, speak too far-fetched just yet, but he's definitely shown that he definitely has the talent. He puts on for his team. make sure that, you know, he won't throw it away. He'll try to go and run for that extra yard, which is part of the reason why I feel like he got hurt, because, you know, he goes so hard for his team. But I think he has the potential to be one of the greats. So.
What the Eagles have in Carson Wentz is someone that's going to be one of the game's premier quarterbacks probably for the next decade plus once he's able to get back and get healthy. And I would caution, I'm not sure if he's going to be that immediately next year because ACL is a 9 to 12 month injury. It takes a little while, and he relies on his legs. But he combines bits and pieces of the game of some of the best quarterbacks we've seen recently, Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Tony Romo. He combines bits and pieces. I don't think there is one exact comparison, but he does things that those guys do, and those are four pretty good names to mix in. Even from the beginning of this season, he had drastically improved his touch on deep balls, and I don't even think he's at his peak there. I think athletically, 2017 shows you how good he can be, and it might be till 2019 that we really see Wentz at his full athletic peak again. But I think in terms of consistently connecting with wide open receivers, downfield, learning kind of when to say when and give up on a play and live to see another down, which is a problem that he's had. He's taken some big hits. I think he's still going to improve, and that should be scary for a lot of the teams around the NFL.
I think they have a future MVP and hopefully a Super Bowl champion. But the big thing with that is they can't do what the Packers have done, because the Packers have that, and they kind of squandered, you know, Rodgers a little bit. They haven't given him the support he needs. So we need to make sure that we give Wentz the support he needs going forward, because he could end up being one of the all-time greats from what we've seen. I mean, if you look at his second year right now, he was on pace to throw a little over 40 touchdowns. Brady didn't do that until his seventh season. Peyton didn't do it till his seventh, and Rodgers didn't do it till his fourth. So if you look at the trajectory that he was on that pace to be an all-time great, and we just got to make sure, we surround him with talent because, you know, to answer the question, he's a future MVP and hopefully a future Super Bowl champion.
I think I agree with you that it's too soon to see how he's going to come back, and I think only his second season, it's hard to tell the finished product we're going to get. But I can tell you with where we are right now, Doug Peterson being an offensive coordinator and a quarterback, and with the amount of former NFL quarterbacks that are on the coaching staff, and I think the rest of the coaching staff around Wentz, and I think Wentz's mentality, I think it shows that we have a kid that is going to come in and day out. I mean, the stereotypical first one in, last one out type of guy. If they don't get themselves in the end zone, he's looking back in the film to realize what he can do better. I think he's just a natural leader that I think a lot of people can kind of support. And truthfully, I don't think the Eagles have had a quarterback like that since Donovan McNabb. I think after he retired, they were always kind of in a quarterback limbo. I mean, Michael Vick was good, but at no point I don't think Eagles fans ever stepped back and said Michael Vick is going to win us the Super Bowl. So I think it's, for once, a calmness in the chaos of the QB situation. I think we may not have the best, we may not have to go, but I think we're going to have a guy that's going to make the team, make the Eagles a competitor for his entire career. Similar to what Big Ben and Tom Brady, like I said, maybe not that level, but I think what they did to their team, I think he's going to have a big effect on how the Eagles do in the standings for a few years to come.
Well, I mean, he's got everything. I mean, he's 6'5", 240, strong. He usually bounces off defenders, which is, you know, ironic. But he's got a huge arm. His accuracy was much better this year. He had a quicker release this year than he did it last year in college. The deep ball is really progressing nicely. I mean, that was a concern of his. He could always hit the intermediate routes, but the deep ball was the thing that was kind of holding him back, and he was starting to hit that more and more. He was starting to hit the anticipatory routes, which he was struggling with. He was just really coming along really nicely for a guy in his second year. I mean, I think he has everything. He's your prototypical first guy there, last guy to leave. I mean, he kind of just, like, even if he doesn't have the most perfect throwing mechanics, he's a guy that you kind of bet on to figure it out because of how hard he works and how smart he is and all that kind of stuff. He's been a leader of the team ever since he took it over. I mean, he's everything you're looking for in a franchise quarterback in a future, you know, MVP candidate, hopeful Super Bowl champion. And I think he's
Like, I don't think it's a hot take to say he's on a Hall of Fame track if he stays healthy.
With Nick Foles now leading the way, what are your realistic expectations for this team going forward? Without Carson Wentz, how far can the Eagles go in the NFL playoffs?
To be honest, Nick Foles played for the Eagles before, and I mean I liked him when he played, but I just don't think he's Carson Wentz. And when I say that, I mean, yes, Nick Foles will run for that extra yard if he needs to, but you could just see that drive that Carson Wentz had whenever he would be in the pocket. Like, you would think he was down, and then he would just surprise you and come out of a bunch and just get a first down and more. And Nick Foles has an incredible arm. Don't get me wrong, but I know he's more so he settles for the sack rather than the interception. So Eagles will get a 3rd and 20, and then 3rd and 15 have to settle for a punt. So
I think they could maybe win a playoff game and then lose. Like, if you ever gamble on football, the golden rule is you always bet against backup quarterbacks in the playoffs. So, like, knowing that and, like, trying to take the whole Eagles thing out of it, it's just like, it's Nick Foles. I mean, the guy is just such a downgrade to Carson Wentz. I mean, Carson was the 7th most hit quarterback in the NFL this year, and that's even combined with how good he is at escaping the pocket. Now you got Nick Foles back there who looks like and runs like a giraffe behind that offensive line. Like the offensive line's fine, but like, I think Carson masked a lot of what that offensive line was, and he still got hit a lot. So now you have Foles back there who's basically immobile. He also doesn't have the big arm, the strong arm. He relies on being an anticipation thrower. I just think it changes the whole offense, and everyone's like, well, just run the ball. It's not that easy once you start stacking 8, and then you have to force Nick Foles to beat you, especially in a playoff game. Now, I will say, if teams have to come here to play, it's a little bit different story. I mean, under Doug Peterson, they've only lost twice at home. That's also with Carson Wentz, obviously. So, I think they can win a playoff game, but they need that 1 seed if they want to really have a shot to make it to the Super Bowl. And I just have, like, people are trying to talk themselves into the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and I can't see it. Maybe a 5% chance of them winning the Super Bowl with Nick Foles.
I think there's a very real chance that the Eagles still have a bye in the first round. They still have a good team. Nick Foles, for any of his flaws he has, is one of the better backup options in the league right now. So I think there's a very real chance they still have a bye in the first round, which would mean in that case they're at least guaranteed to play in the divisional round. And I don't think it's impossible if they win a game. They have one of the league's top rushing attacks and really haven't fully used Jay Ajayi yet, so I think that's something you'll probably see over the next few weeks. But any hopes of them winning a Super Bowl in a year where the NFC is really up for grabs and there really isn't a definitive team that's the absolute Super Bowl favorite, even if New England is always kind of in the back of people's minds, I think, unfortunately, that's almost completely off the table at this point.
I have complete faith that the Eagles will still, at the very least, lock up a first-round bye. I think with the remaining schedule in the regular season the Eagles have, even if they lose to the Cowboys, I still see them getting a first-round bye. So I think the Eagles can make a run in the playoffs. With home field advantage, the Link is a tough place to play, especially in playoff atmosphere. I think Nick Foles is going to be a good enough quarterback, and I think the rest of the team, I watched all the post-game interviews and the post-game in the locker room stuff, and not a single player was down. They were all still celebrating, and they said, even with Wentz out, it's just next man up mentality. They've had that all season. So I don't know if the Eagles are quite a Super Bowl winning team anymore without Wentz, but I feel like the Eagles are still considered to be one of the favorites in the NFC. I can still see the Eagles going to the Super Bowl or at least to the NFC Championship.
It's tough to answer. So it's still a team game. We still have a good team around Foles. And if you look at Foles' numbers for his career, so we have the year in Philly where he goes 27-2. I think most would agree that that's the outlier, along with the year in St. Louis with Jeff Fisher, because everybody knows Jeff Fisher's terrible. So when we take away those 2 years, he's pretty much Andy Dalton. So how far could Andy Dalton go with this team? I think it depends on the matchup. If we run into Carolina at home, I think we can beat Carolina. Maybe if we get the Rams again in some cold weather, Jared Goff, he's a Cali guy. You never know. I think realistically, though, Rodgers swoops in and makes the playoffs and knocks us at home probably.
Well, Nick Foles is sort of an enigma. I mean, if you look at his numbers under offensive-minded coaches like Doug Peterson when he had Chip Kelly and Andy Reid in Kansas City, he's 16-9, 60% completion percentage, 95 passer rating, 42 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Under Jeff Fisher, obviously, he was 4-7. He was terrible, but I think Jeff Fisher's the quarterback killer. That's a whole other story. But realistically, if we have home field advantage and a first-round bye, we're likely going to have to play an inconsistent Carolina or a dome warm weather team like in Atlanta or someone like that coming into the link in January when it's cold. If we can run the ball and just have Foles make plays when we need him to, I think there's a good possibility they can make it to the NFC Championship still.
Nick Foles, he is probably a backup quarterback that's better than a quarter of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm talking about Josh McCown. I'm talking about Case Keenum. I'm talking about Tyrod Taylor. I'm talking about those guys, lower tier starting quarterbacks. I feel like Nick Foles competes with them. And that's not a bad thing because Nick Foles is surrounded by a good team. And this is his offense because he has played under Coach Reid, Coach Peterson, and, similar offenses. They've played a lot together. And, Coach Reid and Coach Peterson have done it a long time. I was actually watching the Colin Cowherd show the other day, and he was talking about how Foles is differentiating between his Reid and Peterson years and then his years under under Fisher. And it's been totally different where Foles is like 19-7 with touchdown interceptions with Reid and Peterson and 7-10 with Fisher. His win and losses is like 40 wins, 10 losses with Reid and Peterson, like 7 and 14 with the Rams. So I feel like the Eagles is where he belongs, especially with the coaches that he has. And I feel like the experience that he has with this team is going to drive us very far to where we need to go. Because we're going to hopefully, like we evaluate, we're playing the Giants, Raiders, Cowboys the next 3 games. Giants are awful, but, it's a division game, so it may happen. You can't really count anybody out of the division. Same with the Cowboys. They're not playing well, but Zeke will be back. They might not be fighting for a playoff spot anymore, so who knows. Then the Raiders are, I don't even know what's wrong with the Raiders. They're just, I don't know what's going on with them. That's very disappointing to watch. But those are 3 games that we could easily win, and Foles could do the job. And then we go to the playoffs and we play teams that are South teams, dome teams. They're not going to play well in Philly, especially with the cold weather. So I'm excited to see what happens with Foles and us going to the playoffs.
And now, here are a couple thoughts and opinions about the Phillies' involvement in the Manny Machado trade talks from this week's winter meetings.
I think that there's a lot of moving parts with the Manny Machado rumors. You obviously have Peter Angelos, who's one of the most difficult owners in sports to figure out. If they don't give a negotiating window for a team, it's going to be very difficult for them to get the return that they want, and that comes down to whether Manny Machado was willing to work out an extension and forego a chance to be on the open market next offseason. If he is willing to do that, both the Cardinals and the White Sox have the controllable starting pitching at the major league level that they could get a deal done. Now, whether they ultimately do that or not remains to be seen. I know the Cardinals, there was a report from Ken Rosenthal last night that the Cardinals had been kind of reluctant to meet the asking price that the Orioles had. If the Orioles really truly want to build a package around 2 controllable starting pitchers at the major league level, the Phillies are just simply not a match. If they're willing to go into prospects, then you might have something. The Phillies have Sixto Sanchez. I think he's probably off the table, but then they have Franklin Kilome, they have Adonis Medina, Ranger Suarez, Jojo Romero, and then they have Scott Kingery, who I think is going to be an all-star second baseman and may very well be on the table if push came to shove in a deal like this. So if they're willing to go into a situation where they take back prospects, then I think the Phillies are very much in play. I'm not even sure that wouldn't be the best way for them to go, and that doesn't even necessarily mean taking the Phillies off or the Phillies prospects, but opening the table to taking whatever the best return is. I'm just not sure Peter Angelos is going to do that. I think it's hard enough to convince him to move Manny Machado. If you're taking back prospects, it signals that you're rebuilding, and I think, in my opinion, the Orioles should be doing that right now with all the free agents they have at the end of next year, but I don't think Peter Angelos necessarily wants to do that. So it might be an impossible task to get him to say, not only are we going to trade Manny Machado, but we're going to trade him for prospects that won't be here for a few years.
Well, it's tough because the Orioles have just mangled this whole thing up. Like you have Manny Machado, he's not going to re-sign. Just you have to move him, but the only way you're going to get big prospects is if you let teams have a 72-hour window to negotiate an extension. Like, what team is going to give up major prospects for a 1-year rental? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you need to offer teams the ability to extend them if you want to get good prospects back. And I know from a Phillies standpoint, I know they're not going to give up big prospects if they can't get an extension done. Like, if they can't get an extension done, they might jump in. But if they can't, I think they're going to pretty much stay away and keep all their prospects. And then next year, they have no problem dishing out $400 million next year without giving up prospects. So I think that's where the Phillies would be. And I think the Orioles just my main concern is I think if he gets traded, I'm not as sure it's 100% locked that he hits the free agent market. Like, he could easily go somewhere else and love it there and sign an extension. So if you're the Phillies and you have a chance to get a 25-year-old top 5 player in baseball, I would almost do anything in my power to get that guy. I just think, as I've read the situation, I just don't think they're going to jump in unless they know that they can get an extension done, which is a little concerning. But I think he's going to be a Yankee. Somehow he's going to end up being a Yankee, and I don't think the Phillies are going to, jump in unless they can get an extension done.
I think the Orioles want to trade him. I think the Orioles will trade him. I can see the Phillies kind of stepping back just because the Phillies aren't really in a position where next year they're going to compete. Machado's going to be a free agent, and there's really only 1 or 2 teams that he's going to get traded to, and those 2 teams are. I'll finish my thought. There's only 1 or 2 teams that he could get traded to that would not only have the money but would have Machado's interest to re-sign as a free agent. And I think neither of those teams have the budget right now to trade for Machado. So I think you'll see the Phillies try to step back and just try to work with what they have and then try to go for him when he's a free agent and try to lock him up long term and just get one deal instead of just getting 1 season and then potentially losing him.
I think that they should wait it out because you know what, Machado, he's good. Like he's fantastic. He's a great ball player, one of the best third basemen in the game. The Phillies could use him. We don't have anybody on the team that's a leader. Everyone's a rookie. Everyone's coming up from AAA. There's no one on the team that's a team leader that's been there, done that could lead the team. He could do that if he came to us. He could take these young guys and teach them what he knows and how to be successful in baseball like he's been. But I don't think we don't need him. We don't need him now. If we could get him in a free agent signing, that would be the best thing that could happen for the team. I don't want to give up any future prospects that the Phillies could use, like Rice Hoskins and all those guys. I don't want to give up anything because the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs did really well this year. And, that means that the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be getting all these guys and that they're going to be a decent team in the next years to come. And, Manny Machado on the team would help us a lot, but I don't feel like that we need to trade for him. Like, we don't direly need him. There's other teams in the MLB, like the Cubs or the White Sox or, those teams that, could use him, more than we can. But I would love to see him come to us via signing, not trade.
I do agree that it's taking a risk as far as waiting till free agency because someone could easily grab him up. But I honestly don't feel as though we have enough to trade for him, so I think we do have to wait for free agency.
So that about closes out our episode about the Philadelphia Eagles, who are at this point still the number 1 seed in the NFC, but of course will it be a challenge without their MVP second-year first-round draft pick quarterback in Carson Wentz. It's going to be difficult, but like everybody said, they're probably going to still end up with home field advantage. They're probably going to get a weaker team roster-wise coming into the link to play them in January. So there's still potential for the Eagles to make a run here, but yes, it's not going to be the same on offense. And of course, Doug Peterson and the Eagles will have to change their game plan. So real quick, I just wanted to thank all of our guests for giving me a couple minutes of their time. Definitely interesting to get points of views from a guy like Jack, who works in the industry, a guy like Tim, who's looking to break into the industry, and then a lot of my friends that I'm still with, including Matt, that's looking to get into the industry just in a different field. And then, just some fans like Rico who are looking to get into a different field, but still, are diehard Eagles fans. And again, was the Wentz injury a hindrance on this episode? Did it shift the mood a little bit? Absolutely. There's no disputing that, but just keep in mind, even though I am not a Philadelphia sports supporter, even though I give my, Philadelphia sports fans a hard time a lot, in all seriousness, it has been very interesting to be in central Pennsylvania this year while the Eagles have been making this run. And we all know how rare it is. It's been years since the Ravens have made a significant run, and we know how much of a big deal it is. So from that standpoint, it's really been cool to be in that atmosphere. And even though the Eagles aren't going to have Wentz, we still have to wish him a speedy recovery. I hope he's able to get back on the field and be exactly what he was this year. And hopefully the Eagles will be able to make some sort of run in the playoffs. Just realistically, though, I'm not sure how far they're going to be able to go without Wentz, but that is certainly going to be one of the top storylines to watch as the NFL playoffs begin. So once again, thank you to all of our guests. Again, you can find information about them, like their social media, what exactly they do, their relationship to me. All of that is in the description box, so please check that out. Go visit them. If you're a Philadelphia sports fan, be sure to check out all the guys that were on this podcast tonight. So for all of them, I'm Jake McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at jmcdonald95 again, as well as Charm City Birdwatch at charmcitybirdwatch.com and Charm City VW on Twitter. You are listening to this through either iTunes or SoundCloud. So until next time, I will say goodnight for all of our guests. And next week, we will have more content coming right here on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast.